Sayın Teknokent Genel Müdürüm, Sayın Meslek Yüksekokulu Müdürüm, Sayın öğretim görevlilerimiz, üyelerimiz, değerli öğrencilerimiz, hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Özür dileyerek onları bekliyoruz. Organize Sanayi Bölgemizin değerli yetkilileri, hoş geldiniz. Araştırma, Girişimcilik ve Yenilikçilik Koordinatörlüğünün ve Manisa Teknokent'in ortak düzenlediği seminerimize Bundy Refrigeration'ın CEO'su Sayın Rodiguez'e davet ettik. Davetlerimizi kabul ettiler. Birazdan Yüksek Performanslı Ekipler ve Kültürel Paradigmaları Yıkmak konulu İngilizce seminerini sunumunu bizlerle paylaşacaklar. Teşekkür ederim.
Okay. More or less, yes? Let me get this closer to my mouth. Yeah, I think a little bit better, right? How is your English going today? More or less good? Comme ci, comme ça? More or less? My Turkish is terrible. The only things that I know I learned from these two guys in the front, which is merhaba, nasılsın, günaydın, and that's it. I'm very happy to be with you this morning to talk about a very important subject, culture. The idea is that we communicate both ends, so I'm expecting that we have the opportunity to make questions and that we can enrich our backgrounds together. Okay? I'm very privileged to be with you this morning. My name is Ivan, as your professor already explained. I'm a Mexican national. I love tequila, I love soccer, and I love working too. So, you understand tequila? Yeah. We love tequila, guys. So, we are going to be talking about this subject there, which is high performance teams. Everybody try very hard to get results in life, trying to succeed, trying to get things transformed, trying to get a transformation happen. But very few succeed. There are very few people who can really transform things in a big scale. The question is why? Why some people succeed and why some people fail? I believe there is a very clear answer to that question that could be potentially generalized independently of the country, independently of the continent, independent of the company. And we're going to try to discuss those topics today. How we are doing? Are you understanding something of what I'm saying? More or less? Yeah? I hope so. And I promise next time I'm going to add more words into my vocabulary of Turkish. So, I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you very much for the invitation. We're going to be talking about two subjects, right? It's what are the traditional paradigms of continuous improvement and teamwork and high developed cultures. What is the current paradigms and what are the new paradigms? Because I want to focus on this section much better. You see this analogy here. Culture is about everything we do, everything how we express as human beings. For instance, language is part of the culture, behaviors are part of the culture, our reaction to certain things, for instance, how we think about the money, about the time, about the success is part of our culture, and there are fundamental differences on all of that. So we're going to be talking about introducing probably a new chip into our brain who help us to have a better, likelihood of success on everything we do. Let me be more specific about it. This is my country, right? Very colorful country. Mexico is always a fun country to be. You need to be in Mexico sometime. This is a beautiful woman dancing and representing part of centuries of history of this country. You see a pineapple right there in the head. So this is pretty much a representation of Mexico. And I'm just using this as an example to you. We can use any example. Turkey is also a very powerful and a very colorful country with many representations of culture. But I decided to show you this just to share a little bit of my background, in this case Mexico. So this is in Oaxaca, by the way. Oaxaca is the poorest state of Mexico. So it doesn't matter that it's poor, there is still very happy people there. So what is culture, guys? So culture is about the values, the behaviors, and the manners that people depict in a specific environment and that are shared with across the community. That is culture, in simple words. What is about high performance? I'm going to share with you a passion that I have. I love flying planes. I'm a amateur pilot. I'm not a good pilot, but I'm trying to learn, right? And I got amazed by these guys there that are called the Blue Angels. Have you listened about it? About that? Blue Angels? No? Blue Angels is a group of pilots who can do amazing things like this, which is fly airplanes, high-speed airplanes. These airplanes fly at an average speed of 1,200 kilometers per hour, so they really fly. And they can be extremely close from each other that you cannot even imagine. How this is possible? How this is possible? Well, this is possible by knowing very clearly all the technical aspects and working very efficiently as a team and communicating in real time everything you are doing. So, a high performance team has three characteristics from my perspective. Three characteristics. The first one, they collaborate between them. They challenge to each one member of the team, and they are going to hold each team member accountable of the results of the team. Do you like soccer? Do you like football soccer? Yes, right? So, I love soccer too. A great team usually is not the team that has superstars in every position. Usually a great team, who, by the way, wins every game, every match, is the one that combines the talent of the individuals and they work together to score a goal constantly. Sounds very basic, but think about it. How many times in our company, in our family, with our friends, we, number one, do not know what to do. We don't have clear roles and responsibilities. Number two, we are not measured. We are just executing without knowing if we are doing the job correctly in the right time or not. All of that, guys, create a lot of confusion and a lot of inefficiency. The so-called developing countries, such as Turkey, Mexico, India, China, Brazil, Colombia, you know, has a lot of no high-performance culture. We are not organized very well. We don't plan things ahead. We are very individualistic, and we have a high power distance between us. We're going to explain all of this in detail throughout this conversation. But the takeaway that I want to share with you so far is that high-performance cultures demand high-performance teams. High-performance teams demand high-performance individuals. So, everybody in this room has pretty much the same number of neurons in your brains. Pretty much the same number, because we are born with that. But it's not about the number of neurons that we have in our brain. It's about how we interconnect the neurons to make decisions, to communicate, to create, to innovate, to introduce new things. That's what makes us different. When a high-performance team is defined, this team is able to connect the neuronal paths and patterns in a very effective way. Let's learn about it, and let's tell me what you think about it. We're going to be analyzing some numbers, just to put the numbers as a reference for us this morning. For instance, this is our world as of 2015, and this is the domestic the gross domestic product per capita in the world. The darker the color is, the more rich the country is. So, who is the richest country based on this map? Or can you tell me a couple of rich countries that you can deduct?
US.
Who?
Norway.
Norway, yeah. US you mentioned, right? Yeah, who else?
United Kingdom.
Huh?
UK.
UK, yeah.
Switzerland.
Switzerland, very good. Where is Turkey here? It's very similar, right? Than some Latin American or Asian country, $1,000 per year. Those are the very dark red items. You have very few of them, very, very few. And then you have, and this is the average. Remember, this is gross domestic product per capita, meaning per inhabitant. The poorest countries are the ones in white or light yellow, where the poverty is concentrated. What continent? It's Africa, right? And also you see that in India, right? And some countries around India. And also you see that in less degree, but also in Central America, Nicaragua, and also here in Bolivia. Why poverty exists in this country if we all are smart people? Why poverty exists? What can you tell me?
Economy.
Huh?
Economy.
Who? Go ahead.
Economy is the main.
Because of the economic basics, yes, exactly. What is behind economy? Usually politics, right?
Politics and working.
What is behind politics?
Success.
Huh?
Success.
Yeah, success or failure, but what is behind politics, guys?
Traditions.
Traditions, yes. But what is behind traditions, eh? Culture. Yeah, culture. Culture can explain many things in this world. Just think about it. I'm passionate about scholar research in these subjects because, you know, in the case of Bundy, we have 9 plants in 8 countries, and each country is very different. So when we try to launch a new initiative, we can anticipate how this country is going to react to this initiative. If they are going to support it, reject it, enhance it, do nothing, you know, it's very interesting. And you can anticipate that. So, understanding the reference of gross domestic product and knowing who the rich countries are and who the poor countries are, this is a good starting point. However, I want to tell you something that is very concerning. And you, as students and as a future professionals on this world, you are very important. Because the future is going to rely in your ability to innovate, in your ability to execute, in your ability to build a better culture. A culture, by the way, is something that you cannot build in a short period of time. A culture is centuries, you know, hundreds of years to change a culture. It takes a lot of time. I think for this great country, for Turkey, Mr. Atatürk started a transformation of the culture several years ago, correct? He introduced the alphabet, or reintroduced the alphabet. He opened the country. He democratized this country somehow, correct? Am I correct on that?
Right.
So, we need people like him, welcome. We need more people like him in every area of this country. So, take a look at this graph. This is very interesting here. You have 3 countries and the world compare, and it goes to 2014. Unfortunately, no more recent data is available. But what this graph is telling us, guys, that the gross domestic product is not growing and has not been growing for the last 50 years. This is a big problem because we are more people in this world, and the total income the world is producing is not growing, which means that we need to divide the amount of money that is available in more people. So this is explaining part of the poverty that has increased around the world. Why this is important? Well, this is important because at the end of the day, we, as citizens of Turkey, as citizens of Mexico, as citizens of the world, we have the responsibility to make this world better. And how we make this world better? If this world is so big, so large, we have 7.5 billion people around the world, different cultures, different way of thinking. How we can make this world better? How you can impact Turkey from your reality as a student, as a future professional? What do you think? How can you make a difference in this world? Any person who would like to share their thought. How can you impact this world? You cannot talk. No, you can talk if you want.
Okay, with the development of industries?
So, through developing the industry, huh? Who agrees with our colleague there? Who agrees that by developing good industries we can make an impact in this world? That's basic, right? And that's absolutely true, absolutely true. But let me ask one question. How do you develop the industry? How can you develop anything?
With projects.
Yes, how do you create projects? You need science. You need knowledge. That's what we need.
Know-how.
Exactly. For me, the future of the improvement of the world fully relies on scientific and experimentation improvements. You cannot get this world better just talking or just thinking. You need to really get some innovation going. That's actually part of the success of this amazing country. And I would say also about Germany. Have you visited Germany recently? Any one of you? Have you visited Germany sometime in your life? Yeah? Yeah. So, Germany is an interesting country. Very rigid, very stubborn, but extremely disciplined and extremely committed to science. Nothing special about that. It's just a firm commitment about scientific knowledge. And I believe that makes a culture very successful nowadays. Because we are in the revolution of knowledge, and actually has been called now the fourth industrial revolution, which is the revolution of connectivity, digitalization, automation, etc. If you analyze Japan for a moment, Japan has a peak in their performance in 1970. What happened in Japan around that time? Well, it was the first wave of automation around the world, and it was pretty much 35 years after the Second War, when this country was fully destroyed. Japan emerged, and Japan introduced with his culture, which is a high performance culture, new paradigms across the population. They innovate like crazy. They start dominating the automotive industry, the electronic consumer industry, you know, I would say the machinery, advanced machinery industry as well. That changed a little bit throughout the time, because then the United States catch up, and then the United States start innovating faster. These three countries, guys, do not be surprised, but between the United States, Japan, and Germany, almost 70% of the patents in the world are concentrated. This is a problem, huge problem, because leading and dictating the rules of the game for the rest. So if we want to change that and create a high performance culture in Turkey, Mexico, and the so-called developing countries, we need to be more scientific thinkers. So we need to really apply physics, chemistry, mathematics. We need to really understand the fundamental principles of this science and apply those creating industries, but not manufacturing industries alone, but innovative, creative industries. That's a big difference between a rich country and a poor country from my humble perspective. Now the question is how we do it. How we do it. Everybody talks about diagnostic. Let's talk about some solutions, guys. This is an interesting chart that projects how it's going to be the profits in the private sector around the world for the next 7 years, in 2025. Let me try to explain this graph very quickly. 1980, the total profits that the whole private sector made around that year represented 7.6% of the gross domestic product of the countries measured. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 2013, the world experienced the highest profitability in the world ever. Nobody else in the past made much more money than these companies in that year. They reached 9.8% of the gross domestic product of the countries measured. Let me explain how this is calculated so you understand what I'm trying to say. Imagine that you are measuring 50 countries. So you're going to add the gross domestic product of those 50 countries, and then you get the total. And then you add the profits reported by the companies working on these 50 countries. And you divide the profits by the gross domestic product. And then you express that as a percentage. Why this is important, and who is measuring this? Well, Baker and McKenzie is measuring that year after year. Why? Because the higher the profits are, the more productive world that you can have. I mean, that's the thought process. And they are projecting deterioration of this profit as a comparison of the gross domestic product as we approach 2025. Take a look at this. The revenues will increase, but the profits are going to decrease. This explains that for the companies to make money in the future, they need strongly be more productive. Without productivity, without innovation, there is no profitability. Have you heard about the word commodity? Do you know what a commodity is? Can anybody share your thought about what is a commodity? Who knows what is have you heard the word commodity or not? Yes? You have. We have one student or professor that is very active. Are you a professor or a student? Huh? Oh, professors are here, so you are a student. Very active student. What is a commodity, guys? And how many commodities you can mention? Tell me one commodity. One commodity. Only one. Paper. Paper is a commodity, right? Electricity is a commodity. Steel is a commodity. Copper is a commodity. Exactly. Palladium is a commodity. Absolutely. Diamonds are a commodity. What else is a commodity? Commodity is something that you extract from nature or you transform with some manufacturing process, but is not very differentiated. The word that I want to share with you today about all of this is differentiation. And here we are differentiated. Let me make a quick exercise here. Ages of you, how old you guys are. Raise your hand. People between 15 and 18 years old. We have anybody on that range? You don't, obviously. It's a university. Between 19 and 20 years. Raise your hand. Very, very high. Okay, so you guys are the millennials, pure millennials of this group. You guys are the future of this country. You have a huge responsibility indeed. Between 21 and 23, raise your hand. Much less. And 24 or more, raise your hand. Okay, so I can tell the vast majority of our audience today is between 18 and 20 years old. So definitely a great performance on that. Take a look at something before we go to the substance and culture. This triangle is a triangle of income distribution. Focus your attention on this side of the triangle here. People making less than $10,000 per year. $10,000 per year will equal about 40,000 Turkish lira per year, right? Am I correct? Using a 4? Yeah, around that? 5? Okay, 45. So 45,000 Turkish lira per year. How many people in the world on the adult level, I'm not talking about children, which doesn't count on this because if you add all this population here, is going to add around 5 billion, not the 7.6 billion that we are. So, guys, we have 70% of the world making that amount of money. Do you think you can educate in a scientific way and feed and develop the skill set of the children with this type of income? Probably not. Then we have people making between $10,000 and $100,000, 23% of the population. So 80% of the population, guys, in the world, actually 90% of the population in the world are making less than 100,000. And by the way, these limits are very broad. So use that as a reference. The key point that I'm trying to make is income in the world has a direct correlation with the ability of that country or that community or that individual to innovate. And then you tell me, poor countries cannot innovate. Of course they can, but they innovate at a much lower pace and at a more smaller, broadness. Think about it. How many patents is Turkey or Mexico or Colombia producing per year? Do you have an idea? What is the population of Turkey? How many millions do we have? 180. Huh? 80 million people in Turkey. Okay. Do you have an idea how many patents Turkey is registering, even in the patents agency in Turkey, per year? Any idea? Tell me a number. What about, let's use that as a percentage of the population. Do you think we have 80 million? Do you think 1% of this population is making a patent innovation? Do you think so? It's too high, right? Too high as a percentage. 1% is too high. What about 0.5%? Sounds about right, or is it still too high? Huh? Too high. Well, 0.001. That's the percentage. And don't be surprised. Freaking big problem. The question is why we are not innovating as other countries, as the ones that we mentioned before, Germany, Japan, the United States, are innovating. Why is different? Well, some of the difference, guys, has to do with the income per capita the citizens of those countries are making. Why? Because people need to focus their attention to think and to really get experts in specific areas of knowledge. Experts, not only general people knowing something. Experts. Expertise and knowledge focus is the difference between innovation abilities and non-innovation abilities. Think about it. Now, obviously, guys, it is clear that these guys in the top of the triangle, of the pyramid, less than 1% of the population, is only 31 million of inhabitants, are the ones dominating the world in terms of pricing, our habits, our taste, the design, the fashion, the things that are going to happen. So these guys are the ones making the others to follow. Let me ask you one question. Do you like to follow, or do you like to be followed? Who wants to be followed, or who wants to follow? Do you understand the difference? You want to be a leader, or you want to be a follower? Who wants to be a follower? Raise your hand. A follower. Who wants to be a leader in this world? Raise your hand. Some of you were like that. But if we want to be leaders, guys, of anything, of a family, of a group of friends, of a soccer team, of our school, of our industry, or whatever, we must know. We must domain the science behind what we are planning to do. And these guys understand that very well. Have you heard about an entrepreneur whose name is Elon Musk? Do you know that guy? Yeah. I sometimes talk about this guy because I found his life fascinating. And the approach that this guy has follows. And I believe he himself represent many of the paradigms and ideas that we are sharing with you today. If you think about this guy, Elon Musk, where he was born, was he American? No. He was from Africa, correct? South Africa. Was he coming from a rich family or a poor family? Rich family, yeah. I'm telling you, there is a relationship between big brains and good income level. The guy had a lot of opportunities when he was a child. His, grandfather used to fly airplanes and take him as a little boy around, different parts in South Africa and then in another countries in Africa. His grandfather was of the pioneers of aviation in Africa. So no wonder why this guy developed, since he was a little boy, an ambition to really understand the basics of avionics. And the guy went above and beyond. He went to the space and he wanted to really understand how to get the NASA and other government institutions obsolete and really show what private sector can do for the space development. So Elon Musk, guys, start really absorbing a lot of knowledge, reading and getting himself educated in the areas that he wanted to be educated. He moved to the United States for one reason. The United States will provide him with the likelihood of success that he wanted to have. Why? Because in the United States he will be filing patents, respecting the IP of the patents. He will be able to have high qualified individuals to transform his ideas into products or prototypes, etc., etc. So the guy succeeds in 3 industries, correct? Solar, aerospace, and electrical cars. And he's not stopping. The guy lives in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a super crowded city full of cars. So the guy spent hours in his freaking last model Tesla just waiting to advance a couple of meters. So the guy was thinking, probably it's time to create a new solution for transportation. Let's get transportation underground, by car, not by, meter or train or whatever. He decided to do that by car. And he created a new company named Boring. Because it's actually a paradox of being bored, right? You are in your car waiting to move, so he called this company Boring. I'm not surprised that in more years to come, the concepts that he's introducing are going to be fully expanded in other countries. Basically, what he's doing, guys, is getting cars moved underground using a, I would say, multivariable, highly sophisticated programming solution. So imagine you are going to pay for channel 1, and are going to be multiple channels. So you get there, and then you move at a speed of a speed of 250 kilometers underground, and you can move very fast. We know, guys, that brains like these guys are plenty, but you need to make decisions on where you're going to be launching your ideas, where you're going to be getting these concepts implemented, and then get your dreams come true. Something is wrong with this pace of growth, and something is wrong with our ability to innovate around the world. What is wrong? I believe that we are our countries. There are 8 problems that I summarized, and I'm going to go very quickly into them just to calibrate a little bit the background. When you have a military security developed in a country, your likelihood to succeed as a country is very high. And Turkey has that. Mexico doesn't have that. Corruption. Corruption is very immersed in our blood in certain countries. Unfortunately, we are, corrupt because we found corruption as the right way to do things. But corruption in institutions is against wealthiness and is against development. High corrupted countries do not innovate fast enough. This is very important. red tape. This is really idolatrizing leaders, having a high power distance between people in power and then the rest of us. The more flat the structure is, the higher likelihood for that country to create wealth and to innovate. This is very important. It's not only be educated, it's also our ability to be mobile and to be flexible. Everybody talk about being flexible in our brains, but what flexibility means in our brains? It means to accept everybody else is telling us as a truth? No. Flexibility means listen everybody's and then make our own conclusions. How many of us do not listen? How many of us are not trying to understand others' points of view? Many times. And this happened, guys, pretty much in every circle. In our family, with our friends, obviously at work, etc. So flexibility, ability to listen, mobile workforce and educated workforce provides a country and strength. I think Turkey has this very well developed. I found the Turkish manpower, you know, the labor force of this country, highly educated, highly committed, hard worker, and I'm telling you that because I'm not reading this, I'm experiencing this because we have a business in Turkey which is proving to be very successful, and I'm not going to be surprised that this plant within our group become the top performer of Europe plants in the near future. Why? Because we have all of this included. This is very important, and I believe Turkey understands that also very well. For your inhabitants, for your people, for your citizens to develop, you need to have infrastructure and good ways for people to communicate, high-speed roads, you know, services supporting this infrastructure interaction. This is very important. Infrastructure for a country is the blood for development. So, I believe Turkey obviously has all of that. Fair, transparent, and competitive markets. That, I think, needs to be further developed, because if you have high corruption, you know, and a lot of bureaucracy to get things done, most likely you are not going to be as transparent as you would like to be getting things happen. Do you know how many days does it takes in the United States to open a brand new business? Do you have an idea? I'm going to tell you 3 examples. To open a new business from scratch in the United States, how many of you believe it could be between 0, meaning 1, and 5 days? Raise your hand. How many of you believe it could be between 6 and 10 days? Raise your hand. To open a new business? Very few. How many of you believe are more than 30 days? I'm talking about the United States. To open a new business? More than a month. And the rest of you don't have a clue, huh? So, I will tell you. 1 day. And you can do it online. You don't even need to be there. That's impressive. That's why you can analyze how many startups are initiated in the United States. That explains a lot, because if you try to open a business in Mexico, for instance, guys, you're going to be a year probably or more, because you're going to have your papers, your ideas, and then the government will tell you, you're missing this, you're missing that, this is not enough, you need to qualify that, or you need to pay this permit, or you need to do that, etc. It's crazy. All of these guys affect the ability of a country, of a culture to evolve. So we need to, with this educated, mobile, flexible labor force, we need to make processes more fair, more transparent, and to be able to develop you know, competitive markets. At the end of the day, if you make your population inefficient, you make your country inefficient. Point blank. Reliability. Wow, this is very important. I was visiting China, you know, some years ago, and people was doing this when I was talking, and then I said, probably they are not understanding anything, right? So I decided to write it down to make sure my request to them, which was very important, was pricing, volume, and capacity commitment from them to our facility in that time in Brazil. And I wanted that they committed, right? So I put in this email, hey, guys, today we are meeting XYZ people, and we are making an agreement that I need these parts by this date, in these volumes, at this price. Please sign this off. And guess what? They signed the email that I wrote down. I printed and they signed it. What happened is, when I was expecting the capacitors made of tantalum to arrive into Brazil, they didn't arrive. And then I said, what happened? I have this paper signed, and then I said to the guy, can you please call the colleagues in China? Guys, I will tell you, we were this close to shoot down the customer. At that time, Samsung, who was needing the cell phones from us to manufacture, to deliver hundreds of them. Big problem, because contracts are not respected. That is also affecting the ability of a country, of a culture, to be respected in the world. So, obviously China has evolved. It's not the same China 10 years ago than the China that it is now. China is probably a great example for us to understand what government, academics, private sector, public sector can make to transform a country into a superpower country. China is definitely a country to watch, to see, to follow, and to learn from. Anyway, contractual frame is extremely important. And the last one is about taxation. Taxation. In poor countries like mine, the government tax very high, the income. I don't know what is the tax income here. What is it, Sultan? Tax income in Turkey.
Vergi gelir.
Huh?
Vergi gelir. Vergi
Given the
gelir.
percentage?
Yes, percentage.
James.
What is it? 40%. 22? So you are in a different system, huh? No, I'm just kidding. So it's between 22, 40%. 22 is the number. Well, that's very competitive, to be honest. If it is 22. So you are exactly pretty much echoing these strategies. Hopefully, could be listened by some lawmakers, by some government officials, because eventually, if you address these 8 points, you have the ingredients for a high-performance country and a high-performance culture. As you said, probably a few years ago, income taxes were higher than what they are now. Now, it's not about having high or low income taxes. It's about how the taxes are used for the benefit of the population. Germany, for instance, taxed 48%. But what you get in return? Free education, all the way around, all the way to, even master degree, free. You're going to pay more. You get free medical service, and you get world-class transportation services. The question is about, and I believe Turkey is investing very heavily in infrastructure. So all this taxation, I think, is being reflected somehow in good universities, is well reflected in good roads, etc. Probably could be reflected even further. But Mexico, for instance, is not the case. Mexico has very poor infrastructure, very poor communication solutions, and the university quality is very low. So our people remain ignorant for so many years. And unfortunately, when you have ignorance combined with poor infrastructure, that equals to a poor country. It's very easy to find this correlation. Okay, how the world is divided in cultural clusters. Let's find where Turkey is. Okay, Turkey is right here. I'm using a classification which is very interesting and is created by an institution that was launched in 1994, about 24 years ago. It's not new. It's actually older than some of you. That is called GLOBE. This GLOBE means Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness. I encourage you to get access to these guys and read about them, because what these guys talk is what is happening in terms of leadership in different countries, how you can manage labor force from different countries, how you should understand the cultural differences between countries. It's very interesting. So if you analyze where Turkey is classified by these guys, it's classified with Kuwait, Egypt, Morocco, and Qatar. They found certain behaviors and certain cultural patterns that are similar between these countries. Let's see where Mexico is located. Is here. Is considered part of this cluster named Latin America that includes all these countries. And then you have the Nordic Europe, and then you have the Anglo world. Take a look at something here. Anglo world that includes Canada, United States, Australia, Ireland, blah, blah, blah. This classification is not made based on geographic proximity only. It's made on cultural alignment. This is very interesting because Australia is very far away from the United States, but citizens between these two countries are very alike. I don't know if you agree or disagree with this grouping that is made by Globe. Do you know any of these countries on this group? Have you been there?
No, but it is interesting. Greece and Kazakhstan is in the same group.
That's very interesting observation, Professor. Indeed, this is considered the Eastern Europe culture, and the situation here, this is not made just because they group, arbitrarily. They made scientific conductual research, and after about 5 years, they made up this classification. This is interesting for you, mostly if you are related to the globality of this world. If you are hiring people from another country, if you are traveling to sell your products, if you plan to launch a global company, you need to understand how the world has been classified in clusters and understand how leadership is interpreted. So, let me tell you a couple of things here. The traditional paradigms. Remember, we have two objectives on this agenda: traditional paradigms and new paradigms. Traditional paradigms that I want to share with you today are 3. And you can tell me what you think. Number 1, when you try to explain someone something or convince someone, the change you're going to make is going to be very limited. On this conversation we're having, when it's finished and you leave the room, you probably will remember certain things. But unless you do something with the information, it's not going to change anything in your life. Anything. Companies expend tons of money training people, sending people to specific courses and whatever. Waste of time. Unless the individuals have the opportunity to experiment and really, practice the information they are receiving, no change is going to happen. No change. The other paradigm is about information. We have now, as we were not before in terms of information, we have tons of information available. Tons. You can put a word in a search engine, name it Alta Vista, Yahoo, or Google, or whatever, and how many articles and information you're going to find? Hundreds. Thousands, correct? It's not about information availability. It's about information processing and information analysis. We need to have this information understood and processed. And the last one, guys, teaching is not enough. These 3 paradigms is how we, nowadays, in most of the countries, most of the companies, most of the institutions, try to teach or try to get people absorbing new knowledge. How many of you are in the engineering areas? Raise your hand. How many of you are in social areas? Some of you? So all of you are actually in engineering, no? No? Most of it. So, but I see some people who didn't raise a hand. They are, if not social, are not engineering. They are what? They are sleeping, huh? No, but most of you are engineering, no?
Yes.
Yes. Which means that The reason what I'm asking is, in your profession, you need to experiment. And I'm sure you have great labs in this university, because all the concepts will need to be tested, right? For you to understand gravitation, for you to understand, I don't know, differential equations, you need to do the exercise. You need to process information. And I'm sure you're doing all of that. That's the only way knowledge is going to tight in your brain and it's going to become a habit. And if you do that constantly, then you transform, your reality. Now, let's talk about the new paradigms, guys. And I'm going to share with you only 2 paradigms. That's it. 2 paradigms. And these are those paradigms. Number 1, we need to develop a pattern in our brain to become more scientific thinkers. And the second paradigm is about practice that scientific pattern over and over and over until it becomes a habit. What I mean by this, by the way, if you do this, I think you can get a high-performance company or a high-performance community or a high-performance university or a high-performance country if you combine scientific thinking and practice it. I'm not telling you anything new. What is new is probably the combination of both. I'm going to make an experiment with you in a moment, talking about experimentation. Before I do the experiment, let's talk about this in more detail. Remember that I told you 2 paradigms, scientific thinking and practice. How this is done. Number 1, you need to have a clear direction for where you want to go. You make a decision. You want to become industrial engineers, electromechanical engineers, mathematician, physics, whatever. That decision, you made it. Then you know that, okay, I want to be an engineer, but I need to start. And I'm going to start in this university in Manisa, and I want to start now. Okay, so you understand your current condition where you are now. So you know that you're going to invest, I don't know how many years you invest for an engineering degree in Manisa, 5. So you know that from here to here, you're going to need 5 years of your life. At what time do you start your education here, university? 18? So you know that you're going to be here from your 18 years old all the way to 22, 23 years old. And if you are not very smart, probably you're going to be a little bit longer, huh? But the thing is, once you know where you want to go, and once you know where you are, you start. But you need to have some shorter-term objectives. That's why you have the 5 years split by years, or by semesters, or by every 3 months. That's why you do exams, that's why you do projects, that's why you do a lot of things, because you need to be acquiring this knowledge gradually. Why am I explaining this to you? Sometimes people in a leadership position say, hey, we want to be the best refrigeration company in the world. We want to be at 20% EBITDA, and we want to grow at 10% rate every year. Okay, that's interesting. How? And what is the short-term goals? So all those goals need to be defined, guys. This is not very complicated to understand, isn't it? It's very simple, very, very simple, very logical, very common sense. However, you will be surprised how often we jump from number 1 to number 3 without going to number 2 and 4. It's very important, team, very, very important that we follow this sequence over and over. This is going to reduce the likelihood of failure that you're going to have. Okay, let's play a game here. I'm gonna use a diet that should be open here. I want you to help me with an experiment very quickly. I just need 3 people with a piece of paper and a pen. One of them, please. Piece of paper and a pen. Who would like to participate? You need to come here. You're going to do it from there. And one from this group, one from this group, and one from this group. Who from this side? Paper and pen. Paper and pen? Okay, thank you, Professor. What about here? We need one. Inan, you cannot be. Anybody else? You do it. You don't have paper? You don't have pen? You don't want to do it? So Inan, okay, your colleague behind you. You do it? Thank you. Great. No, you keep it. Pen, piece of paper also. And from this group, we need one. Only one. Who is going to do it? Professor? Students? My friend? All right, we have one over there. Okay. So, guys, I'm going to ask you to come with me here very quickly. My friend, come here. Also you. Perfect. And also you. Okay. You guys are going to help them if you are not free of activity. Merhaba, your name is? Safit? Huh? Koyuat? I'm sorry, Tuyuat. I'm sorry. And? Erdan. Okay, good. So we're going to make an experiment now. We're going to see how smart we are. Don't worry, everybody's very smart, don't worry. Please come closer to the table so you have a space to put your piece of paper. Okay, these are the instructions, okay? You need to write down a number in your piece of paper following these rules. I'm going to launch the virtual die, and you are going to imagine what number is going to appear. You know the die has 1 to 6. I'm going to launch the die 3 times. So you need to put a number right now of what you think the number is going to add after I launch the die 3 times. It can be 3 or 18, right? So put a number. Just tell me, and you cannot copy, right? One number first try. Just mind from 1 to 6 what you think it's going to be. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So we have one number here. We have great. We have one number here. Just put me the 3 numbers to get there. Just imagine. Perfect. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, good. So we got the 3 numbers, right? Let's see how smart you guys are. I'm going to launch the die now. And you help me adding up. So the first one number is going to be 3. Okay, put 3 over there. Write down number 3. Second number is 1. And the last number is 2. So if you add those 3 equals 6. What was your number before? 10. So you are not smart. What happened with you? Be with me here. What happened with you? 11. You are wrong, my friend. It's even number 6. What happened? Your teachers are not telling you anything, huh? What about you? Oh my God, you're even worse. You're 12. It's 10, 11, 12. So I thought you selected the audience much better this morning, huh? What happened here? So
It's my mistake, sorry.
how do you feel, guys? Are you smart? What happened? Yeah, you found double number, huh? Let me tell you, don't go away, don't go away. Second part of the experiment. Second part of the experiment. Let me go back here. So, they don't feel very bad, although the 3 of them were wrong, very wrong. Why they don't feel bad? Because this was not scientific knowledge. It was depending on what? Chances, right? But they should remember some of the statistical lessons that they learned, isn't it? And they should be able to project with a likelihood of success the number. They didn't have enough time. They know the rules, but they didn't have enough time. My pressure is too high on them. So don't worry, guys. But now is an opportunity for you to do better, I hope. So let's take a look. What is the number that is missing in this series? You have half an hour to tell me. Write it down. What is the next number?
Write it down.
Just put it there.
Yes.
What is the next number? Okay, you said is 14? 14, huh? Okay. 14. Let's give them an applause, right? It's true. Wow, you guys are not understanding anything. Why is 2, I'm sorry, why is 14 and the number is actually 2? You guys are not understanding the basics of mathematics, guys. What is wrong with you, huh? So, let me ask you this question. What happened now? You were expecting number 14, and I surprised you, it's number 2. What happened? Who is wrong? Am I wrong? Are you wrong? The question is wrong. Let me go back to the question. The question says, what is the next number? In this series. Yeah, but this series is unique. You know, it's cycle. Let me tell you something. Human brain, you just experience here how our human brain works. And this is talking about high performance teams. When you don't know the answer, it's because you have more information to receive and you need to ask questions. For instance, a good question could be, Ivan, is this series normal series? Nobody asked me, right? You just go straight to number 14 because obviously if you see the pattern, you are expecting. Exactly, but we didn't know that after 12, after 6 occurrence, this started over. How many times in our regular life we assume answers without knowing the truth? Many times. That is not scientific knowledge, and that's exactly what we're trying to re-educate ourselves. Let's give them a huge applause to these guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. I like your mustache. That's great. Thank you very much. So, very basic. But guess what? Life is not very different to this. Let me tell you something. Both cases, both the die exercise, the chances exercise, and this exercise completing a series had the same problem. We didn't know what to expect. By the way, scientifically speaking, that is called the knowledge threshold. When you don't know what to expect, that's where your limit of knowledge is. So the question is, how we expand our knowledge threshold constantly. And the only question that I have found, guys, is to re-educate our brain. Our brain is probably the most fascinating organ that exists in our body. There are so many fascinations in our body, but the brain is simply amazing. Do you know that the brain represents only 2% of the total weight of the body? Only 2%. But it consumes 20% of the energy of the body. Do you know that? The brain is very selfish. The brain really demands huge level of energy to work, 20%. Same as oxygen from the blood, same as nutrients from the blood, all of that. However, we give sometimes the brain not too many attention because we believe the brain is the brain and it acts automatically. But it's not the case. At Bundy, in the company that we work for, we try to use our brain to innovate, use our brain to make decisions, use our brain to build relationships with customers, use our brain to build relationships with employees. Using the brain sometimes obliges us to do not let the brain to fill the blanks. Let's do together this last experiment. What it says there.
Jumping to conclusions.
Jumping to conclusions, right? Everybody sees the same thing? Yeah? Yeah? Well, you guys are wrong. It doesn't say that. But our brain completed with 50% of the information missing. The brain is amazing. What about here? And you can read it, right? And we are missing a lot of words. The brain is amazing. And I'm just telling you very basic examples. Because, for instance, when you are seated here and you maintain certain posture of your body and you fall to sleep, your brain takes care of you, of your breathing, of your pulse, and everything. Even though you are not awake, the brain is doing so many things automatically for us. Nothing wrong with that. Don't take me wrong. However, there are certain things that we need to let the brain set. Stop. It's not your time. It's my time. It's the rationalization of the decision-making process. How many decisions we make on a daily basis automatically, or I would say instinctively? How many?
95%.
You think 95? You will be surprised. It's 99.9%. Only 0.1% of the decisions that we make on a daily basis, according to the people who study this scientifically, are making decisions consciously. What is the likelihood to make a mistake when we let the brain do decisions automatically? Is low or is high? What is the likelihood to make mistakes? High, right? It's high, very high. So when you guys combine all of this inefficiency by a team, by a community, by a country, then you get successful countries or unsuccessful countries. It's about critical mass, guys. So anyway, let me advance this very quickly. Going back to the scientific thinking, probably these guys are going to the next class. We need to probably nail down the status in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Scientific thinking, guys. Let me ask this question. Who would you believe? You are born with this? Raise your hand. Or who would you believe you learned that? Who you believe is born? Who you believe is learned? You guys are right. It's learned. We need to learn scientific thinking. We do not come with this when we are born. We need to learn it, indeed. So at the end of the day, let me pass this over because I want to conclude pretty much on this slide. So far, and in a way of conclusion, you have successful countries, unsuccessful countries. You have rich countries, you have poor countries. You have high educated people, you have low educated people. How we close the bridge between that is, from my perspective, adding scientific thinking and practice. Scientific thinking is not enough. You can be the smartest guy in Earth, but if you don't experiment, if you don't get your ideas translated into actions, guess what? You're not going to do anything. It's nothing. You know, it's not enough. Similarly, if you're practicing and you end the day very tired every day because you are practicing and practicing and practicing, but you are lacking the scientific portion, you are not going to transform anything in it. Question is then, here in our reality now, 2018, students of engineering, how we make a transformation of Turkey, how we make a transformation of this country. Well, I believe the transformation, guys, is going to come precisely on how good we domain the science and how we apply the science to resolve, human people problems. Now, about practicing, there is an exercise that, because of time, we're not going to make. But practice is about this. How many of you write down with your right hand? Raise your hand. Most of us are right-handed. How many of you write with left hand? you guys can leave the room because you are odds. No, I'm just kidding. There are less people, but we have a combination of both, right? Left and right writing. The important thing is this. If I ask the left-handed people to write down a letter now with the right hand, do you think they're going to do it as fast as they do with the left?
No,
Do
of
you
course
think
not.
the quality of the letter will be the same, left and right hand? No. And guess what? Since they were born, they had both hands on them, but they learned to use only one hand. Again, very basic principles. But what is important is we all need to learn at least how to use both hands, because it's going to force the brain to use both hemispheres constantly. And this is going to help us to expand the capacity of the brain. Learning languages, playing a musical instrument, playing with mathematics, reading about physics, quantum physics or whatever, is going to expand the capacity of the brain. What you guys are doing now in this university is one of the best and most beautiful phases of your lives, because you are going to be not repeating this experience again. When you get out of school, you're going to start using what you learn to solve problems. And the solution of problems sometimes is not as fun as acquiring new knowledge. My piece of advice, if I may, guys, you don't ask for this piece of advice, but I'm giving it anyway, is try to learn new things every day. You must be reading at least 3 books per month. You need to, and diverse books, different type of books, scientific books, novels, magazines, whatever. Try to read, because reading is a great way to learn new things. I believe the future professionals in the world will need to speak at least 4 languages. For sure, the one that you have in your country, Turkish in this case. English is fundamental. You need to domain speaking English. That's a fundamental requirement. And then you need to select another 2. One romantic that you want. You can choose Italian or French or whatever you want. But then probably you need to learn about German or Chinese. It's very important for you to remain competitive in the global labor force that you guys are going to face. The labor force in the world is changing. It's not going to be very traditional. Probably you're going to be the last generation of people who are going to still be employed as we, Generation X, are employed. But you're going to be the last, because your successors, most likely, will be working from home, from a computer, from a server, without getting out home, and they will be making decisions in real time, about how a robot is manufacturing something hundreds of meters or hundreds of kilometers away from your point of location. This is among Industrial Revolution number 4. In a second opportunity, I hope we have the chances to talk about Industry 4.0, because there are great things that this Industrial Revolution is going to bring to humanity, to increase productivity and revert this negative trend on economic growth that we saw at the beginning of the conference. Now, let me share with you something else before we finish. I want you to remember, please, this chart behind you. So, scientific thinking, we can force our brain to do it somehow. But this is we are gonna forget about it. Unless you do it over and over and over, you're gonna forget about it. How you're gonna make these new habits happen, and I chose a picture here of a lady learning how to play golf. Do you like golf? No? It's a very boring sport. I don't like it either, but I just use it because I found it very difficult to play. The first time that I went to a golf course and I took the freaking stick, I was unable to really make a good swing. And I said, why I cannot make it? And then I found out that when you're trying to learn, you need something like this. And I applied these guys at work, and I applied this in my family, and it works, at least for me. But I believe it can work for you too. Number 1, once you decide to do something, you need to practice it every day, daily. Number 2, you need to develop the sequence of activities to make the activity, theoretically. Have you heard about Taekwondo? Do you have that sport here in Turkey? Taekwondo, yeah? Or Kung Fu, yeah? How many of you learned when you were children Taekwondo? Any one of you? You would be so kind to come with me here? Can we give a round of applause to our partner? A big applause, guys. I'm gonna test what I'm telling you here theoretically with this lady, and we finish with that. What's your name? Guljan, something like that. Okay, so Julna, please don't feel shy, okay? Because it's about to prove a very interesting concept. You study Kung Fu Taekwondo or what? Taekwondo. Do you remember the word kata? Or probably was used another word in Turkish when you learn, you know, all the movements and all of that? What was the Turkish word for that? For the forms? Ah? Yeah, no, the word. In English or Japanese is kata. It's the same word. Same word, kata. Can you show us one of the katas that you remember? A little movement. Go ahead, to them. Yeah, let me know this. I need to be aware because... Okay, I'm going to put my hand over here. Oh. Wow, good. That is, you know, one way in combat. But tell me one of the other movements that you learned. You remember one of the movements? A little bit. What do you remember? Yourself. Just do it to us. Okay. And then? Excellent. And then? Good. And then I'm in trouble. How old were you when you learned that? 7 years old. See the power of these concepts. How her brain connected in front of all these strange people, be very shy. How she remember that? Well, she remembered that because she practiced it. She connect the neuronal connections in the brain. She has a coach who tells you what is the right position of the hand, you know, the movement, etc. You have a professor who was with you. Hey, move this hand here, move that hand there, close to you, correct? And then you most likely practice it and practice it and practice it, even in combats, and you probably got your belts as a yellow belt or brown belt or whatever. Or even I need to be careful with you then. So let's give him a big applause. This really works. You can just show an example with our colleague. She was 7 years old. I don't know how old is she now, but at least it's 10 years after, right? And she remembered clearly how to do that. If we want to be scientists, if we want to innovate, if we want to change our reality, we need to think differently, and we need to practice the new thought process on a daily basis. So I believe that's all from me today, and I wish you guys all to really have the opportunity to train your brains and retrain your brains over and over so you can build great things. The last slide, I believe, has my my contact data, and you feel free to change or interchange your experiences as time comes. I know language today was a little bit of a barrier because I see some faces like really struggle with my poor English, but I promise next time I'm going to introduce more Spanish. No, just kidding. I'm going to introduce more Turkish into this, and you are going to introduce more English to your own backgrounds. All right? So I want to give a huge applause to all of you guys.